welcome. The DataViz group we've been meeting for about 1.5 years now. So how many people, this is the first time you come to an event? And I would say that's most, that's like 80% of you came for the first time ever. So thank you very much for coming out. We talked a little bit earlier about what kind of interests you guys have. Tonight we're going to cover a lot of different things. We talked about the Wi-Fi, our hashtag DFW DataViz. If you're not already a member of the group, if you didn't join, this bit.ly link will take you to our group page where you can just join and you'll get email notifications when we schedule new events. We try to do one event a month, is where we've been sort of consistently tracking.
Is it always here, this location?
No. So we bounce back and forth between SMU and Plano and SMU and Dallas. SMU gives us a free place to meet, which is nice, but we try to catch people down there and catch people up here, back and forth. So next month, the plan is back down into Dallas. So our sponsors are SMU, of course, for giving us space, and Infographics is my design company, and so we put the whole thing together. Our goals for the group, since most of you, this is your first time, is it also your first time to any meetup group? Anybody this is the first time you've ever gone to a meetup event at all? Got a handful? So our goals are generally networking with local people that are interested in DataViz and infographics. When we have opportunities, like a speaker's in town for a conference, we try to grab them and get them to do an extra talk for us if possible. We do talk about design tools and have tool demonstrations, talk about employment opportunities, which we will talk about next. I'd like to stop for a moment and see, is anybody in a company in a position where you guys are actively hiring, whether it be designers or data analytics or data scientists, that kind of thing that you want to share and announce?
We're hiring an email production specialist, so I don't know how much would be related to this, but you got to know data and you got to be able to help out creatively with the emails.
Yep.
And the company's name is SxSW, just EXCENTUS.
Okay.
So if you know anyone.
What's the title?
SxSW, EXCENTUS.
And the job title?
It's a email production specialist.
You have a couple cards in case anybody's interested.
I don't, but
Nope.
if anyone wants to touch base with me afterwards, I'm on the meetup group as well.
Okay.
I may have to leave a little early, but
Yeah, feel free to post
I'll
a
post
link
on the meetup
on the
group.
comments for this event, and people will see that. Everybody here will get an email that a new comment was posted.
Sure, thanks.
Hi, my name's Bill. I work for Intuit, make TurboTax and QuickBooks and that kind of stuff. We're always looking for analytics and visualization people. Confidence to get the position open. I don't know any specific, but I'm also additionally looking for some contract design work or graph visualization, not charts, but graphs. If anybody has passion there.
Okay. Take one of my cards before we leave. Anybody else know that you have open positions, hiring? Yep.
Yeah, my name's Andrew. I work with Credera. We're a management consulting company here in Dallas, but I'm in the BI practice. And we're looking to basically fill a lot of positions. I think we've sold about 50 people's more work than we have for this year. So we need to bring in as many people as we can. But it's mostly analytics, some front-end visualization, but we're looking especially for back-end type people. Oracle, DBA type stuff's helpful, but all that kind of blended into the BI space, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Marcella from Fossil. We're looking for a senior analyst that's technical, web-based. So if anyone has experience, especially within Cyton or Adobe Analytics, we're looking for someone that's the right fit.
Okay.
Last one, Marlene Miller with Collin College. We are looking for a writer in public relations. So if you know of anybody who's interested.
What about the other way? Anybody actively looking and wants to broadcast your availability?
Yeah, we just closed our office a few months ago.
Money.
I'm looking for a position as I mentioned, I was senior art director, so everything in graphics.
Okay.
We had a writer let go with us also.
Okay.
Here's my contact. Email me and I'll send you his contact info if you He's
What do you mind?
fantastic. He used to be a professor at BYU.
Anybody else?
I just relocated from Houston, and so I've been doing project work in human resources. And one of the reasons I moved was to get away from human resources and to do more community relations and marketing. I'm looking for either a startup or a nonprofit to be able to get out and just do like community relations with them. I have a marketing background as well as human resources.
Okay, excellent. Welcome to Dallas.
Thank you.
Yep, in the back.
Yeah, I'm currently a PhD student in statistics. The salary I'm not graduating in the near future, but I'm currently seeking for some internship opportunity if you've got one in data-related analytics or statistics or data science major. I'm open.
Welcome. Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah, I have a small firm doing database management, migrations, integration, a lot of open source software, MySQL backends. So I'm looking for projects that could use that kind of help. Yeah, I'd work with a lot of nonprofits, so maybe we should talk a little bit. So, yeah, thank you.
Excellent. All right, thank you. I mentioned earlier, and the camera is running, I've been trying to put videos. This is definitely amateur hour as far as the video is concerned. We've got 5 or 6 of them up. I just put a couple more events up last week. Trying to catch up. I think I caught up through August of last year. We've got, I think, 3 or 4 more raw videos that I need to process and put up there. I just got to find time to do it. But they're all up there on YouTube. We have a playlist that's just videos from this DataViz group at this bit.ly link, DFW DataViz Video. A couple people saw there's a flyer up at the front table. I'm teaching a course again on infographics and data visualization design at SMU. It will be at the Cape building, which is down in the Dallas building, for 6 weeks. So it's going to be 3 hours a night for 6 weeks on Tuesday nights, starting on April 5th, so in a couple months. You guys, if you're interested, the course is $5.95, but this discount code will get you $50 off. You can search for it. The link is on that flyer. This is the bit.ly link to get you there. The SMU URLs are just huge, so there's no way it wouldn't even fit on the page. This group, because SMU supports us, also that same discount code, MUDV is Meetup DataViz 316 will get you discounts to any of these other courses that they have as well. So data analytics, big data, Hadoop, even the sketchnoting and graphic recording class. I don't know how much the discount is because these classes are all different prices, but it gets you something similar to the same discount off of my course. I open it up. I have a couple to mention, but does anybody have any upcoming events from other groups you're involved with that you think other members here would be interested in?
Hi, I'm with the Digital Analytics Association, and we have you speaking.
Excellent.
In 2 weeks.
This one?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the one. I'll let you take it.
No, go ahead. Explain the group, though.
Okay, so it's a group of analysts in all ranges, and we have a big event every year that's our symposium, but we, throughout the year, have small, what we call chapter events. And the next one coming up is March 9th, and we have Randy speaking, so we're really excited. And it's probably going to be at Max's Wine Bar in Uptown, and we'll provide food and drinks.
And there'll be wine.
And wine.
Yeah, I'll mention that one real quick. That one's going to be all about tips and design tools, software, websites that we use to design data viz and infographics. Very different from tonight because we're not going to cover that here tonight. Any others? Any other groups you guys are involved in? Yep.
Social Media Breakfast Dallas on Thursday morning, 7:15. Can't remember exactly where.
This Thursday?
This Thursday.
Yep.
But if you look up Social Media Breakfast on Meetup or on Twitter, you should be able to find it.
Okay. Would you post it in the comments from on the Meetup site too? That way everybody can find that link. So yeah, this one's on March 9th. Anybody going to South by Southwest this year? Interested? One?
Free version.
the free version without a pass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be down there. I'll be doing a little talk on Monday of South by Southwest, but I'm going to try and post links to any other DataViz, data analytics, infographics themed talks. If you're interested, I'm going to try and post something as well. But we may have a couple events that are in the free area where it's out in one of the bars or something like that where we just go and hang out.
Sounds good.
I know from room reservation that the next event this group's going to have is going to be on March 22nd. I haven't put it on the site yet because I don't have a speaker nailed down yet. I have a couple possibilities, but we are always looking for new speakers. I think that's the next slide. Yep. So if someone at your companies, of somebody, or even if you just have a topic you want to see and maybe we can find a speaker, help me out. Put me in contact with people that would be good speakers for this group. It might be case studies of stuff you've done before. It might be some work that you guys are building tools for, or depends on who you know. So we're always looking for new speakers. We keep this group free, so really we're looking for speakers that are local. We also look for, if you guys are members of companies that would want to sponsor us for an event somewhere in the $500 to $1,000 range, we can fly a number of the speakers that I know around the country and authors about DataViz. We'd be happy to fly them in. We just don't have funds to do that without a sponsor. We have a bucket up here for a free ebook from O'Reilly, one of these DataViz books. Did you guys catch this when you walked in? If you want to drop your business card or name in here, we will draw this. And if you want to do that, why don't we do that at the end? We'll draw that. So if you guys will just pass that around, or feel free, we'll just load that up, and somebody's going to get a free ebook from O'Reilly. If you're into the more heavy data analytics side, anybody thinking about going to the Strata Hadoop conference in California? Two things. One, I'm giving away a free pass. I have one free pass from them that if you go to the Cool Infographics site, there's a page just for giveaways, and there's where you can register. And at the end of February, we're going to draw and give away a free pass to the conference. We also have a 20% discount code that if you or your company are going to buy a couple passes, that code AFF20, and there's a link on the site as well, will get you 20% off. Okay. Tonight's talk is the 7 deadly sins of infographics design. And what I mean by that is these are the common mistakes that we see over and over and over again when people are designing information. And it might be in a presentation, it might be a chart, in a report, or a handout, and of course it's also in infographics and in the social media graphics you see online. Real quickly, I'll tell you 5 things about me. Number one, I organize the DFW Meetup group. This is my group. We started in 2014, and we've really had a really strong attendance and growing. We're up over 850 members now. So we've really, I think, reached a point where we're self-sustaining. Infonute's my design company. We design infographics and data visualizations for clients all over the world. About half of them are the ones you see online, the social media marketing kind of infographics. The other half of our work is completely confidential under NDA, where companies have data internally that they're never going to publish online, but they want to do better at using it and communicating it internal to their companies. I run the website, coolinfographics.com, where I try to highlight the best, most interesting designs I can find from designers all over the world. And very rarely it's my work. Come on in. And I post 2 or 3 times. And it's really meant to be an inspiration site, to give you ideas of different ways to visualize data or information. My book is Cool Infographics. Looks like this. They're $40 a piece, if anybody is interested. I have a handful of copies. There is a free chapter, and I'll put the link up. It's near the end of this. There's the first chapter you can download as a PDF for free as well. And then here at SMU, I'll be teaching the course coming up in April. All the links from tonight are at this one URL. So on Cool Infographics, DFW DataViz Feb 2016. If you want to snap or write down that URL, that'll give you all the links to all the other examples I'm about to show you. I've got about 100 slides, so it's going to be a lot. So I'll let you snap a photo of that real quick or write it down. Or if you're on Wi-Fi, type it in. Okay, everybody got it? Everybody good? So to give you a little bit of perspective, I get about 300 submissions every week to the Cool Infographics site of people that want me to post their infographics. There are a lot of infographics out there, and there's a lot of infographic design work going on. I only post about 3 or 4 a week. Sometimes it's ones that have been submitted, and sometimes it's ones I just find. I may find them and just like them that way. So there's just a ton out there, and a very little portion of it's very good. There's a lot of stuff out there that's not very good. And you'll see a lot of people are just spraying and broadcasting their infographics out there online. Now we as consumers, or readers, or the audience, have an attention problem, which is we are trying to look through more information every day. The most recent research in 2014 was that all of us, an average American citizen, are exposed to what they call the information equivalent of 280 newspapers per day. That you have to decide if that's something important, something you're going to act on, or just ignore, or skim, or go through. And that was only 40 newspapers a day back in 1986. So when people talk about shorter attention spans, this is why. Is because you still have 24 hours in a day, it's all you got. But you have a lot more information that you're going through. So as a quick primer on data, this yellow square represents the size of a gigabyte. Right? And a gigabyte is about the size of a movie on a DVD. Movies on DVDs are 1 to 2 gigabytes in size. So if I shrink that down, so now this yellow square is a gigabyte. This red square is a terabyte, so a little more than 1,000 times larger. Today's laptops, you'll get a 1 terabyte drive or a half terabyte drive, something like that. I'll go one step further to a petabyte. So now there is a single yellow pixel that is a gigabyte. You see the small red square is the terabyte, which is your laptop. Petabytes are a little over 1,000 times larger than that. And so when we measure data warehouses, we're really talking about petabytes to give you a scale of how much information we're talking about. A petabyte is 1 million movies, that one little yellow pixel. So 1 million movies. A few years ago, Google revealed that they were processing 20 petabytes a day, but that was back in 2008. They haven't revealed more current information than that. They're pretty tight about that, but that's a ton of information. That's 20 million movies back in 2008 every day. There's 2 different research studies that estimated that the entire written works of mankind in every language that's ever been written down since the beginning of recorded history adds up to a grand total of about 50 petabytes. That's everything we, as a human race, have written down. However, it used to be last year, now it's 2016. In 2014, Facebook was opening new data warehouses, and they were up to 300 petabytes of data storage. Why does Facebook need more than 6 times the entire written works of mankind in data warehouse space? Any guesses? Pictures, what? It's all marketing content. Videos, right? Audio, video, images all take up a whole lot more space than text does. And so the more we do in animated video content, engaging interactive content, all that takes up more space. The NSA just opened up this data warehouse and analysis facility in Utah. They, of course, weren't talking about how much storage they had, but there were a couple different estimates from the security industry that they were opening it with about 2,000 petabytes of available storage, which is 2 billion DVD movies worth of storage. So that's storage. We also talk about how much data is moving across the internet and how much we see when we're going on the internet and browsing and stuff like that. In 2016, the average is going to be about 88,000 petabytes per month of data moving across the internet. And sometime in late 2016 or early 2017, it's going to cross over 100,000 petabytes a month of data. So what that means to us as consumers, number one, every day it gets harder and harder to find what you're actually looking for. But as producers, as designers, we want to make things easier to understand and faster for our audience to process. That's really why we move things into visual design and infographics design. We are drowning in data, and it's not going to get any better, right? 2017, we're not going to go, whew, good thing we don't have all that data anymore. You know, it's only going to go up from here. We're never going to have less data than we do today. But we, as a species, have a couple of advantages. And number one, 80% of your brain, I've seen 60, I've seen 90, this research study said 80. 80% of your brain is dedicated to visual information. So that's your sight, your visual memory, your spatial sense. There's just a huge amount of your processing power that is dedicated to vision. You can see an image like this if you were to see this in real life and know within nanoseconds that your life was in danger. You don't have to pull out your guidebook and figure out what is that shape that looks a little different than the graphs and do that. You are the best, most powerful pattern recognition machine on the planet. Humans are still better at computers at recognizing patterns and understanding the meaning behind that pattern. This is a website called planet4.org where they have these high-resolution photos of the surface of Mars. And they tried to get computers to identify these little black plumes and pick them out, and they just could not get it to happen reliably. So they set up this website, and they're asking hundreds of thousands of users to log in and help them identify these surface features on Mars, because we are that much better at picking out patterns and understanding that's just a shadow, but that's actually the pattern we're looking for. So that's recognizing visuals and patterns. The other thing that from a marketing standpoint, from a persuasive standpoint, and a communication standpoint, visuals are 65% more effective than just text or audio alone. If I blank that, and all you're doing is listening to me, in 3 days, so on Friday, you would only remember about 10% of what I told you. But if I can tie that information to a visual, actually tap into that bigger, more active part of your brain, you are much more likely to remember the information if I can turn that information into a visual and tie that data and make it relative or related to the information that we're talking about. Now, advertising knows this. They have been doing this for a very long time, hundreds of years. Big iconic image, short message or brand or company, and the whole point is that that's going to tie and stick in your brain a whole lot better than if they just like put a text advertisement in the classifieds, or something like that. You are much more likely to remember that visual. And it's a big reason why companies have logos in the first place, is that you as a consumer are more likely to remember the picture of a company than you are the name of the company. So when you make a purchase decision, you're more likely to buy from a company you're familiar with, and you're more likely to remain familiar with it if you can remember their logo or their name or their brand. So from our standpoint, we are surrounded by visual information. But in my world, I don't define everything as an infographic. We have to make a couple distinctions. So just because it's visual information doesn't make it an infographic. This chart I call a data visualization. There are more than 80,000 data points represented in this chart of the stock market indices, and it's just a visual representation of the data. And it's up to you, the reader, to try and find some meaning in that, to decide what's important and what you're going to use as information out of that. There's a middle point that I call info art. So this is a graphic that is based on data, but it's not something that you're actually going to go and use and make a decision with. This is a visualization of the first 1,000 digits of the mathematical constant pi. So we have all 10 digits as arcs around the circle, and there is one continuous line that starts at 3.14159 off for 1,000 digits. But you're not going to come and use this and say, I need to know the 300th digit of pi. Good luck. It's pretty, it's art, they sell it as posters, it's based on data, but it's not actually something you're going to use to make decisions with. So then infographics, I define as a bigger design that combines text and illustrations and icons with data visualizations and other things. So there are I think 26 different data visualizations in this one infographic. So being good at visualizing data is a tool we use to build infographics. And the layout has structure. It might not have a lot of data. It might be diagrams and information and concepts, so it doesn't always have to be numerical data. But that's how we define infographics. And so it might be a chart and data and text and some icons on a PowerPoint slide, or it might be a tall infographic like these that you see online. And we find online that people are increasingly searching for infographics. So this is Google Trend data of how often people are putting in the word infographic as one of their search terms. I started Cool Infographics, the website, in 2007. And now it doesn't even show up as a blip. It's nothing compared to the explosive search for infographics. I mean, kids are doing research projects and searching for infographics before they go to Wikipedia, just because it's easier, more engaging information for them to grab and potentially even use in whatever report they're writing for school. And the 0 to 100 scale, if you're not familiar with Google Trends, they just normalized all the data to a 100-point scale. So good infographics, good designs are understood faster because we are pattern recognition machines. They're memorable because you're going to remember that visual that's tied to the information. And ideally, it's actionable, right? It's led you to a story. It's led you to a conclusion so that you now know something and can do something different. It might be buy a product, because some of them are sales related. It might be vote a certain way. It might be eat healthier. It might be call your mother. It's whatever that information is educating you or convincing you to do. Now the challenge we face is that all those hundreds of thousands of infographics out there, that most of them are bad. Most of them are not very good, and yet we still are looking for them as more often now than ever before. People still love the visual elements even when the designs are bad. So tonight we're going to talk about what I call the 7 deadly sins of infographics design. These are the mistakes or errors that we see most common when people send or publish infographics online. False, haphazard, textual, questionable, confusing, repetitive, and verbose. So these are the common mistakes that designers make. So number 1 is false. And what I mean by false is the visual, the graphic, doesn't match the data. And it happens quite often. And if this is the only one that you remember, I would say that accuracy is the most important thing about a data visualization design, because all those good things with visuals are more memorable, they're easier to understand, they're actionable. All those will hurt you because they will remember that you messed it up. You will shoot your credibility in the foot if the graphic you show doesn't actually match the data. And once you start looking for it, you will see it all the time. That's not what 80% looks like. That's not what 20% looks like. But if you don't look closely, if you're not a critical audience or a critical reader, you might just blow by that. And we find a lot of times people will look at the visual and not read the numbers. And so if the visual is wrong, they'll walk away with whatever that wrong impression is, never actually reading the text. And we see that quite a bit. Pie charts have to add up to 100%. The golden rule of a pie chart is it has to add up to 100%. And what happens is people take the wrong data set, throw it in a charting tool, because someone said, I need a chart, I need a visual, and that data had no business at all anywhere near a pie chart. The big guys do it. So this is Nielsen, that does a whole bunch of market research. This was their smartphone market share. This is what's called a tree map. So in a tree map, every one of these rectangles is supposed to be sized to match the data. And the total rectangle adds up to 100%. But you'll see Apple here in yellow at 34% is almost the same size as BlackBerry here at 9%. And the week later, they had to republish this corrected version. Now the rectangles actually match the data. And you can see it's dramatically different than what they originally published. These are what we call false visualizations. And I would say 90% of the time, it is purely an accident. It is just not using the software right or not doing the design correctly. Anybody remember this one? This was a really popular infographic last year. Show of hands, anybody see this one before? So this is showing you by the size of these circles how much money is raised by charities. And then over here, how many people die from the diseases that these charities are trying to raise money for. Right, and they're trying to show the mismatch between and their color match. So this is a charity, and here's how many people are dying from it. Except that the data's right, but these circle sizes are nowhere close to what they should be. So I got really upset. So I redesigned it correctly so that people could see what it was supposed to look like. So it is descending, right? You do have the most money down to the least money, but nowhere near to the point where it's so small you can't even see it, right? And what happens is circles are a two-dimensional representation of a one-dimensional value. And so we as an audience, you see the area of the circle, not the diameter of the circle. And what they did is they changed the diameter based on the size of the value, not the area of the circles the way it's supposed to be. So you have to do math. If you're going to do size shapes, you actually have to go up and do math and pull out your spreadsheet. If you take one circle and you're trying to show the second value is 3 times as large, you have to figure out the area that's 3 times larger and then back into the diameter. Because all the design software, whether it's Illustrator or PowerPoint, only lets you change the width and the height of a shape. It doesn't. There's no field that says what's the area of that shape. If you triple the diameter, which they did in that journalism piece, you actually get a circle that's 9 times larger. And so you over-accentuate the data. Now, I've been showing that example for a long time. CNN did this wrong last month. So this is a live example of this report on ISIS attacks. And what they did here, I'm going to blow up this key, is that one incident is this size, and they say 3 incidents is this. Now we know that size circle is actually 9 times larger than the first circle. And so this way over-accentuates that this is a hot zone compared to these other areas that only had 1 incident. And you can see pretty clearly what they did is they just tripled that diameter. The right way to do it, if you're going to work with shapes and circles, is to actually figure out the area of one and then proportionally figure out the area of the rest. You got to set up a spreadsheet. You got to figure all this math out beforehand to figure out what all these diameters are supposed to be, and then go back into your design software and size all the circles correctly. So that's false. 2 is haphazard, meaning you want to tell a story to your audience. You don't want them to have to figure it out. This is an infographic all about the company Salesforce. And as far as we can tell, it's every bit of information this company, Outbox, could find about Salesforce. It's revenue, it's acquisitions, it's partners, it's geographical regions, it's different kinds of apps that they work in. It's just everything all thrown into one infographic. You as the reader, there's no flow, you don't know where to start. You really can't go left to right, top to bottom, right? There's no obvious topic or obvious point to the overall infographic. It's just here's a whole bunch of data. You'll see a lot of these. These are called landscape designs. Anybody seen something like this before? A handful of people. This is, I think, the social media landscape, where they just cluster company logos into different categories. Again, it's just kind of haphazard. You as the reader really don't know where to look. You might be interested in one thing and somebody else might be interested in totally something else, and it's really hard to find because you got to search for it. It's almost like a, where's Waldo? And they're getting worse. This one's actually not too bad. This is the marketing technology landscape. Yeah. And they keep getting bigger, and they're really proud that we have this graphic to help you, but you're not going to go and use this and make decisions with this. This is a series called Data Never Sleeps, showing statistics about what happens on the internet in a minute. And this was the first one. They're up to version 3.0. They might even be up to 4.0. I don't know. But this data has nothing to do with each other. It's just random statistics about the internet, and so it's just kind of haphazard. It's up to you to try to get some meaning out of that. Online, we need to understand as designers of data and data visualizations that your audience is only going to be around for 5 seconds. We have millions of page views on the Cool Infographics site. Most people are only looking at an infographic for somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds. So you've got 5 to 10 seconds to get your message across. And so when we start a project, one of the very first things we ask is, what's the key message that this design needs to convey? In this case, it starts with, hey, Google's making 97% of the revenue from advertising. We have this big colorful pie chart of the top 20 keywords that you can buy in Google AdWords. And you don't need to know that number 18 was rehab, number 6 was lawyer. That's details that a very small percentage of your audience is going to dig into. If you get, all right, Google's making their money from advertising. Mission accomplished, you can move on about your day, go on to the next infographic or email or whatever you want to look at. Mission success, because you walk away with that message. So we want to lay out an infographic to have a clear flow of information, whether like most of the ones online are what I call these tall infographics, and so you expect your information to flow top to bottom. Or visually you can create with color an obvious path where you want to walk your audience through the story that's in the data. Most infographics that tell a good story follow what I call the 3-part story format. And so the 3-part story format just says, start with introduction so you know what we're talking about. The title, the intro, might even be a couple charts about here's the information that you need to understand before you're going to understand our main point. And then that main point needs to be big, bold, and obvious. It needs to be that visual center that attracts your attention, that gets that message across in 5 seconds. And then you really do need to finish it with some type of conclusion or call to action. It doesn't have to be a heavy sales pitch, but what is it you want your audience to do now that they've seen your information? So this infographic is called The Tower of Beer. And Tom, in the intro, starts investing $1 a day at the age of 25, and by the age of 70, he has amassed this retirement fortune and can afford this massive tower of cases of beer, which visually we compare to the Statue of Liberty down here, teeny tiny little Statue of Liberty. And here, the tallest tower in the world in Dubai currently. And then Tom, happy and drunk, on the top of his tower of beer. And then at the bottom, the whole conclusion or call to action is pretty simple. It's just learn more at rothira.com because they're the ones that publish the infographic. So it doesn't have to be a heavy sales pitch, but if it's something that interests you, now you know what to do. You need to go to this website. So that's haphazard. The next one is textual. A lot of people seem to think that if they throw text in a JPEG image, that makes it an infographic. Yeah. You'll find a lot that show numbers, that show data, all of it in text. This is showing a number of active users on social media sites from 1.4 billion on Facebook down to only 40 million on Vine. All the rectangles are all the same size, all the fonts are all the same size, so it's up to you, the reader, to actually read every one of those numbers and do those comparisons in your head. You have no visual cues other than it's a descending sequence to understand the actual magnitude of how big Facebook is compared to Vine and Pinterest and LinkedIn. We saw this one earlier, so the data never sleeps. But here, all the text you have to read. In fact, they've jumbled up all the font sizes. And the font sizes have nothing to do with the data whatsoever. It's just how big can I make this number and fit in this slice around the wheel. I did a talk last month at Creative Mornings, and I was giving them a little bit of a hard time about this. This was their stat page that they shared about their speakers and about how many chapters they have and how many videos they publish and how many people attend their events, and it's all text, right? And not only that, the biggest numbers are the smallest values because they can fill more space. They don't have as many digits. And so the actual size doesn't give you any visual indication either of how big or how small those data values should be perceived as. So when you visualize data in PowerPoint, in whatever, you have to understand that you are trying to show multiple values so that you can make that data easier to understand, that you can put it into context for your audience. I can show you that a little over 3 billion users are on the internet today. And I can make it really bold and a big font on this big projector, but you still don't have any context for that number. Is that a big number? Is that a small number? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? How should I perceive this number? And if I don't give you, as a designer, that context, you're going to bring your own. So whatever else you were working on today, you're going to compare that to 3 billion. and decide, okay, that's a big number or it's not a big number. And as a designer, I've now lost control of the message in the story. Big fonts are not data visualizations. That doesn't work. That doesn't count as visualizing your data. I also can't chart one number all by itself, right? A bar chart with only one bar, again, doesn't give you any context or any understanding of how big that number is. So if I chart this, in this case, in a pie chart, that 3 billion is compared to the total population of the planet, which is a little over 7 billion. So we're a little more than a third, not quite a half. We got a long way to go. Got a lot more people that have never been on the internet before. And you create that perception because of how you choose that number to compare it to. So this one was a much larger number. If I take that same value, there are 3 billion internet users, and compare it to the total population of the US at a little over 300 million, million with an M compared to billion with a B, that's almost 10 times the internet users of every man, woman, and child in the US. That's a lot of internet users. That's huge. And that's context is created based on what values you choose. And it might be the time, segments you choose to display, or the data set you choose, or the comparisons you choose. But you are creating that perception or that understanding of the data when you visualize it. One other point is a lot of designs, whether it's infographics or reports, will visualize some data points, but other data points they will show as just text. Sometimes it's they ran out of time. Sometimes they didn't have enough space or enough budget to visualize a whole lot more of it. But your audience is going to look to these first. Anything that you took the time to actually visualize is, to your audience, obviously the most important data that they need to be looking at. And anything that's in text alone, that's secondary. They may not even read that data. So generally I try to say, if you're going to include it, because we want to make our stories simple and we want them to understand it in 5 to 10 seconds, if it's important enough to include in your design, make a visual of it. Unless you're okay with it being treated as secondary and they may or may not read it at all. So that's textual. Questionable. So your audience are skeptics. You've got to get over the credibility hurdle pretty quick. Once again, you've only got 5 to 10 seconds. So you've got to give them a reason to believe that your data is something they need to pay attention to. This infographic was put out by the White House. The White House has started putting out a number of infographics on the White House blog. This one in particular was all about the U.S. reliance on energy sources, so domestic oil and alternative energy sources and stuff like that. Nobody has any idea where any of these data values came from. There are no data sources cited. Nobody knows where they came from whatsoever. So all the comments and posts about this infographic online, nobody was talking about the energy. Everybody was talking about the data. Where did it come from? Did they make up those numbers? Those aren't the numbers I've ever seen before. They didn't jump over that credibility hurdle. Of course, they actually made it worse by not citing any of the data sources at all. We all love Wikipedia. Don't cite Wikipedia as your source. I shouldn't have to tell people that, but I do because people do it all the time. At the bottom of every Wikipedia page, this is the bottom of the page on Wikipedia about infographics, right? They list all the root sources and where Wikipedia got their information. Go there, make sure your data actually says what you think it does, and then cite the original data source. When you cite data, you don't want to, what I call, obscure your data source by just saying, hey, we got it from the World Bank. And then if anybody wants to validate that data or check that data or use it for their own purpose, then they got to go on their own search and hunt to go find that data, because the World Bank has a lot of data, and it's a really large site, as are some of these others. You want to be as specific as you can, just to make it easier for people to find your data. This is a footer of a much taller infographic where they listed out almost full bibliographical citations of where all their data came from. And if you want to follow this link and go look at the data, you're more than welcome to. This one is a tree map of the budget for the BBC in the UK. And they actually went one step further. So down here, not only does it source from the BBC, but there is a URL to a public Google spreadsheet where all that data is available to anybody who wants it. And it just makes it hyper transparent and makes that infographic or that design jump over that credibility hurdle instantly, and people are now looking at the data and believing that data. So that's questionable, confusing. So don't ever design a chart like this. Please, ever. Don't ever design a chart like this. The last thing you want to do is confuse your audience. 5 to 10 seconds. I'll say that over and over again. You've got to get your message across crystal clear very quickly. This has got to be probably one of the worst infographics I've ever seen. That's pretty harsh. But I'll zoom in on this, what looks like a pie chart, but it's not really. It's data on top of what looks like an image of a partial pie chart in the background, but it's just this random association of facts. And it's just horribly confusing to an audience trying to read this infographic. And it's up to you as the designer to make your data visualizations easier for your audience to understand. This is what Excel will do by default. So this is a data set about skin cancer rates in 4 different countries from 1975 to 2007. Right? So this is the default chart that Excel would put up. And within, never leaving Excel, I mean just using Excel as the design tool, within about 10 or 12 steps, you can take this design, clean it up, and tell a nice, clean story of how Australia has a much higher skin cancer rate than the other countries. I mean, get rid of all the what's called visual noise, get rid of the grid lines. You don't need all these years because I don't specifically need to know where 1983 was. Clean it up. Actually gray out your reference data so that the data, your story, is actually a color that stands out and really attracts your audience's attention so that that's what they know they should be looking at when they look at this chart. So simplify, simplify, simplify. There are only a couple designs that I would call good complexity, that are complex designs, but they did a really good job with it. This is a poster, the timeline of the history of pop and rock music for the last 100 years. And so it's a big poster, obviously. Not online, you'd have to zoom in and take a look at the details. And so it's got all these bands and different kinds of music and how they evolved and that sort of thing. So it's really good complexity that draws you in to explore the kinds of music you like and bands you recognize and stuff like that. But it's not something that you're going to absorb within those 5 to 10 seconds. It's meant to be a longer form design. Okay, repetitive. Your audience can grow numb. And they can grow numb if you show them the same chart type over and over and over again. In this case, I've got 10 pie charts. You're never going to remember what this one was compared to the rest of them. You can really just sort of numb your audience by using that same design for data visualizations over and over and over. This one article had 90 pie charts over these 3 maps. And it's pie charts are hard in general to compare data. So it'd be hard to compare this one with this one over here and this one up here. Visually, that's very hard to do. But with this many pie charts, it makes it very hard to read that data. This one did it with bar charts. So this is the overall infographic, but these bar charts were completely different data sets, even though they're color-coded sort of similarly, and then they started changing the colors down near the bottom. But when it's all in bar chart, bar chart, bar chart, bar chart, whether it's a PowerPoint presentation or an infographic, your audience just starts to lose track of which chart was which and what data was which. The exception to that is what's called small multiples. So small multiples, the idea is you're establishing a new way to visualize data or a recognized way to visualize data, and then you're going to repeat that same visual for different data sets. Similar, but different data sets. So in this case, these are all the NBA basketball teams. And so these 5 are the 5 starters for each team. And the line thicknesses between them are how often they pass between each other. So it makes sense that once you understand what that visual means, to then apply that to every one of the other NBA teams. You wouldn't want to change and visualize it differently for different teams. That wouldn't make sense. This one is fruits and vegetables and when they're in season. So in this donut chart, you've got 12 segments for the 12 months, and then you establish that as your design language, and then highlight which months your fruits and vegetables are in season across the whole infographic. But if you don't have something for small multiples, what we generally recommend is that as you step through your data, that you change your visual style. Your audience understands, okay, I've now moved from one data set to a next, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth data set. It's very obvious to them as they progress through your information. If you change your visual style, they get it that you've now moved on to a new data set. To help you out, there are a couple resources, but this is one that's free online called the Data Visualization Catalog. And the Data Visualization Catalog is an ongoing effort. Last time I looked, they were about 2/3 filled out. And so each one of these circles is a different way to visualize data. And if you click on any of them, it will show you examples of data visualized that way. Links to websites that have used that visualization style. And if it's available, links to tools that you can use to create that type of data visualization. Severino's doing this as a project all on his own, which is fantastic. And it's just a free website to look this stuff up. And once you scroll down, some are starting to be grayed out because he hasn't gotten to all of them yet. But it's a great resource. And the last one is verbose. And you will see this quite often, where it should have been an article or a long-form blog post, but they took all the text and they saved it as a JPEG file and they called it an infographic. And you as the audience, you're going to look at something like this one and go, man, I don't have time to read all that. I'm not even going to bother. I'm just going to move on and forget about it and go do something else. And so this much text can really turn off your audience. Not only will they not get your message, they won't even attempt it. They just won't even attempt to read that much text in an infographic. Same thing with presentation slides. Don't put a whole bunch of text on presentation slides. You need a good balance, like we talked about at the beginning, for visual retention of visuals and text that go along together so that that visual would trigger someone to remember that type of information. So those are the 7. False, haphazard, textual, questionable, confusing, repetitive, and verbose. And I would say these types of infographics make up more than half of all the infographics out there online. That you will see these kinds of design mistakes over and over and over again. As a wrap-up before Q&A, I mentioned earlier, I got a couple copies if you want to look through the book, but you can download a free chapter online for free. If you want to check out the book, it's the first chapter on the science of infographics. We have a LinkedIn group that you are all welcome to join, where we are a group trying to talk about the craft of visualizing data and publishing infographics. I try to moderate out anybody who goes out there and says, hey, check my infographic out, check it out. It's not a place for links to infographics. It's really for questions or case studies or examples of, hey, this didn't work, or hey, this really did work. And you can lurk or post questions of your own or answer questions. And then again, my course starts in April. Flyers over there. And then I'll open it up for any questions. What you got?
So on that one where you had a graph for one of the,
Visual and not visual, visual and text.
Visual and not visual.
Yep.
That's crazy you understood that. But did you use that intentionally to signify like active versus inactive? Or?
You could, if you want to do a comparison between the two, like a side-by-side kind of thing.
Yeah, you want to show like the active in green with like a chart or something. Not even a chart, but just a good visualization.
I would do,
and then
you could. I would do color and then grayscale.
Okay.
Right, so your more current stuff that you're really trying to talk about is your colored, chart or illustration or icon or visual.
Yeah.
And then your reference, your comparison to last year's number or the other company's numbers, or whatever. You would still show it visually, but show it in grayscale so they know that's just the reference.
Got it. Thank you.
So, what inspired you to go into infographics? Was there a light bulb moment where you said, I can do this better, or something like that?
I was working in consumer product companies, and we would do these massive market research studies, so segmentation studies or conjoint studies, and we'd get the report at the end. It'd be a 200-page report with 150 bar charts in it, and we were trying to make sense of it, and then we had to turn around and convince our company to do something now that we've learned this research information, design a new product, go down a new marketing path or something like that. We had to take that data to the retailers and say, here's why we designed this product, and we want you to make shelf space for it. And then ultimately design packaging and advertising for an end consumer. So that's how I started visualizing data, is because I just had to make sense of it and then be able to communicate it to all those different parties, and not in a way that was 150 bar charts.
So, by the way, great presentation.
Thank you.
So, is the most popular format still the long page format?
Yeah, so the most popular format you see online is what I call that tall format. It is so easy for web browsers. They know that if the content's too long to put a scroll bar on there, it's easier for your finger on the mouse to scroll up and down than it is to try to go side to side. It's a lot harder. A lot of web browsers struggle with the really wide ones. Some of them will shrink them down to fit on your screen, and so then you can't read anything. And some of them will give you that scroll bar, but then it just scrolls off. I've even seen them just scroll off into the sidebar text, right? And so the sidebar text just gets overrun by the graphic that was in the content space of the web page.
One more question.
Yep.
So, is the process still a manual creative process for building this, or are there tools that kind of automate some of these?
There's a balance. So there's a whole talk about tools, but in general, most infographics are put together in a design package. Might be Illustrator, might even be PowerPoint, where you can put together this tall infographic. But then, say you use PowerPoint, I know some companies, because that's what they have, but at the same time, you can use the charting abilities built into PowerPoint and make the charts or the data visualizations in your infographic updatable. So if you either change the data there or link it to an Excel spreadsheet and change the data there, your infographic would automatically update as well. Most of the visuals we do is still pretty manual, unless we're doing simple stuff like area charts and bar charts. If you get more into the interactive, or I would say even the higher end scientific, educational data viz, where you've got massive 20,000 line, 20 million line data sets, you're doing these big network maps, then you start getting into code, right? And doing coding in R or D3 or processing or something like that.
How complex is the coding in D3?
D3 is really nice to use. The libraries for D3 continue to grow. There are hundreds of different chart styles of libraries that you can use. And it's really become the dominant way to visualize with JavaScript online for interactive kind of stuff.
Yeah, what tools do you use to produce your slides?
To do the slides?
Yeah.
This is Keynote. This is Apple Keynote to do the presentation.
Okay.
But none of the infographics were done in Keynote. Those were all done somewhere else.
What is that infographic right there conveying?
This actually is this one, which was an infographic or design for a client that we had to what I call sanitize. And so the idea is that this version of it doesn't have any meaning,
Okay.
because we've taken all the data out of it and just given you the intent of it was a visual of weeks of the year and different times during the week and what was going on, but we knew sanitized it to use it as the book cover.
The minutiae here, you showed the Google searches for infographic over time.
Yep.
There appeared to be a deep valley
Yes.
every
See?
year at New Year's.
Pattern recognition
What was that?
machine. Look at that.
It's Christmas holidays.
That's exactly what it
Is
is.
that what it is?
And then it
Yeah.
also dipped during the summer, which is when the students are in school doing searches for
I didn't
papers.
notice those.
Yeah, so most people apparently are looking at infographics from work, right? So this dip is the break between Christmas and New Year's every year.
They're not at their desk.
They're not at their desk. And this break here is the summer break. Now, if you look at like the website statistics, it's weekday. My traffic drops to a third of what it normally is during the weekends. So most people are doing it during the week, generally at work is when they're searching for infographics, or doing their homework if they're students, because they don't want to be doing that on the weekends either. Good question.
What did you think about the resume infographics?
I love infographic resumes. There's a whole chapter in here. I have a whole presentation on infographic resumes. If you're interested, I maintain a Pinterest board of infographic resumes that I can get my hands on. I've got about 1,500 of them out there. And that's what I call the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's everyone I can get my hands on, and some of them are horrific. And some of them are just amazing. And so there's a whole topic of how do you use an infographic resume? Is it separate than your main resume, or do you blend them together? What do you do when you've got the automated submission systems where you have to upload, a Word doc or a text file of your infographic resume and that sort of thing? So yeah, love them. And they're continuing to grow. You're seeing more and more of them.
I teach information literacy
Mhm.
community college.
with students about bias and, as you say, tracing the source.
Yep.
But is there, it seems like this would be an easy way to create bias.
Yes, so I generally say that every chart, every data visualization has some bias. Now you want to minimize that bias, but even just choosing, you know, where to cut off the date range, you're changing somebody's perspective of that data. You know, in the stock market, I could show you just the last month, or I could show you the last 100 years, and you would have a very different impression. So as the designer, you want to be as independent or objective as possible so that your data rings true to your audience and doesn't look like you're, you know, trying to skew it one way, or you're only looking at data without showing a true comparison. And they will call you out on that. If people find that, because you do have skeptical readers and an audience that's going to go, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. You can't cut that off, or you missed this whole part. Okay?
When doing like a large report that has a bunch of text, but you're trying to insert some infographics in it, what's your opinion on duplicating the numbers from the graphic in the text?
Are you talking offline or online?
Offline.
Offline. Offline is not as important because, say you're reading a board and you're paging through it, you can see the data, and your text could say, as you see in figure 3.4, you know, the interest rate has gone crazy or whatever. Online, it's a much bigger issue because the search engines have no idea what's in your infographic. All they see is there's a JPEG image that the web browser is going to display when somebody brings up the web page. You know, and so you have to surround it with all that text, specifically the text that you want people to be able to find, because it's got to be in the text, in the metadata, it's got to be in the image tag, it's got to be everywhere so that people can find it. Sometimes infographics and reports are used as like the executive summary, where you're trying to summarize very high-level data, and then the text would actually have a whole lot more detail, or you might even have the full table of data, you know, or something like that, or either right there in the report or an appendix or something like that. In that case, if they're different, where you're summarizing versus the full data, I would still show both.
What are you seeing in terms of trends for the use of static, beautifully designed, highly designed infographics versus, you know, interactive, or programmatically designed?
Yep.
With
So
D3 and whatnot.
Static infographics are still far and away most of what you're going to see out there.
They're beautiful.
I would say 90-95% out there is still just static JPEG images. Infographics that are interactive, more data visualizations that are interactive, and animated, even videos that include data visualizations, and they call them infographic videos, are absolutely becoming more popular, but they are much harder for people to share online. So when you're talking about online infographics,
you can't link to a specific set of data or things like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so say I've got an interactive chart, and I can pick which states I want to display the data from because it's interactive and you built it in Tableau or something like that. If I share that, basically the sharing just shares the link, right? And you lose an image. You have to take a static snapshot and make that an image that goes along with it, but then when they get there, they can start massaging the data. There really isn't a good way, and most people are not good at taking, say, the embed text and embedding that HTML code in a new place so all the interactivity goes with it. So they want that button that just says share. Videos are becoming more popular because YouTube's so easy to share. You know, so Twitter will automatically play the video, and Facebook will automatically play the video and stuff like that. So you're seeing more and more of that because it's easier to share. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming out. Sign up, take a drink, mingle, whatever you want. We're done.
Are you going to auction your book?
I'll auction it for $40.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. That's what you were talking about. Sorry. Did everybody put their card in for the free ebook? Everybody that wants to put their name in? This is not my book. This is a free ebook from Wiley or from O'Reilly. Nobody else? Free book to Marcella.
Yay!
No way. this link will let you choose and download one of those. Bruce, good to see you.
My man.
Thanks for coming out. Good.
Get a bigger.